go and they'll put up their house and they'll mortgage their cars and everything else they own.
And he is starting to move into Manhattan.
Trump Tower was structured in a way that made it a money laundering paradise.
Trump Tower became one of the first buildings in New York where shell companies could buy and sell condos without identifying yourself.
If you go back to the 80s, Senator Henry Scoop Jackson got a bill through Congress allowing the immigration of Soviet Jews to the United States at a time when immigration had been highly restricted.
We'll honor the right of a person to leave a country freely and return freely, just as clear as anything can be.
The Russians saw it as an opportunity to open their jails. That's when you see members of Russian organized crime come to the United States for the very, very first time and end up in Brighton Beach.
There were certain techniques for money management and money movement that were prized above others. And these involved real estate.
It started off simply as money laundering, pure as simple. And you had in 1984, for example, David Bogadin, who was a Russian mobster, met with Trump. Trump Tower had just opened the previous year, and Bogadin, who had no legal way of making that money, sat down with Trump and bought 5 condos, and the state attorney general ruled that that was money laundering. Vyacheslav Ivankov, who was very close to the great mastermind of organized crime, Semyon Mogilevich, and he was sent to the United States to oversee the rise of the Brighton Beach Mafia. And when the feds were looking for him, they looked all over, and they couldn't find him anywhere in Brooklyn. Instead, he was living in Trump Tower.
Donald Trump marries Ivana. The Czech secret police takes note of this. The intelligence that they gathered was that Donald Trump was being pressured, not clear by whom, to run for president as early as 1988. They thought that it would be good for Czechoslovakia if this husband of a Czech citizen became the president of the United States. After his successes in New York City, he got into the Atlantic City casino business. He goes big, builds the Trump Taj Mahal,
Which would be the largest hotel casino in the world, and I think it's going to be a tremendous success.
That turns out to be his undoing.
In a town where, for the last 10 years, no casino with 60,000 square foot has ever been fully utilized, on what basis would someone build one with 120,000 feet? He was destined to fail.
Trump Casino was hit hard for having violated U.S. federal anti-money laundering regulations. It suggests a culture of willful disregard of the law.
He basically unravels financially. He also was unraveling personally at the same time. His marriage was falling apart.
By that point, he had filed, I believe it was 6 bankruptcies. He had no way to move forward professionally. He couldn't get a bank loan anywhere.
There was a homeless person sitting right outside of Trump Tower. I remember my father pointing to him and saying, you know, that guy has $8 billion more than me, because he was in such extreme debt at that point, you know?
The Russians have a particular type of mark whom they go after. They go after somebody who has business resources, perhaps some shady morals, so that they're amenable to the bribery, or perhaps are in a difficult financial situation, and either has political connections or aspirations. I've just described Donald Trump. He was the perfect mark for the Russians.
The Russians saved him. They rescued him. He would not have gotten back in business without them. I think it's safe to say he couldn't have run for president if he'd just been a guy who was $4 billion in debt. When the Russian mafia does something, it's with Putin's permission, and it's serving his interests.
Have you ever knowingly done business with what I like to call organized crime? Have they ever stopped by?
I've really tried to stay away from them as much as
right.
possible. Although I must